Here's a question. Do movies have worldviews? And if they do you know how to find them? We're going to discuss all this and more in today's video. But first, don't forget to click like and subscribe so I can afford to buy my kids bologna. So before we can start answering this question, we need to first answer the question of what is a worldview. And one of my favorite definitions comes from Sean McDowell, who says that a worldview is a story about reality. And that every story has three components: an origin, a problem or a predicament, a resolution or a solution. So think of worldview in that sense, that it is a story about our world or a story about reality. So when we think about worldview as a story, it's easy to see how movies can actually communicate a worldview. And most movies actually have a very clear and identifiable worldview that's being presented throughout the film. But here's the thing, when we go to the movies, we're not often asking the question, what is the worldview of this film? We're being dazzled by lights and sound and drawn into the story of these characters and their journey. However, I think it's important for Christians to ask the question, what is the worldview of this film? And what are some of the questions that we need to ask to figure that out? So let's start with the process of finding worldviews in movies, and then we'll apply it to a couple films that you may or may not have seen before. Okay, let's start with a few things. First of all, some movies can actually have more than one worldview and can even present contradictory worldviews, themes, or ideas. Movies are actually really difficult to make, and they are mostly made to earn money, so things can go wrong with a movie's message. However, there are many meticulously crafted movies that present a cohesive and coherent worldview that we can find by asking a few simple questions. Number one, what does the movie present as good and evil, wrong or right? Number two, what is the problem with the world? And how should the heroes address that problem? Number three, what does the hero learn? What are the words that they live by? In essence, what do the good guys believe in? This is something that you might find at the climax of a film. So the hero defeats the bad guy and then he says his words that he lives by, the thing that's changed him or that motivates him or whatever it is. How does the film end? Question number four. And what messages does it reinforce? Number five, look for things to be repeated over and over again. So these are words or themes, or maybe it's a lesson that the hero keeps learning. Something's being repeated over and over again. Ask yourself, question number six, how does the film encourage you to live or act a certain way? See, we can often look at movies and say, well, they're fantasy, they're fiction, and they are most of the time, but they often correlate to things that happen in the real world and in our real lives. And so the movie may be asking you to live a certain way or encouraging you to make certain choices or advocating for a worldview, a way to live. Okay, so now that we've looked at some of the questions that we should ask, I want to apply them to three films. They're all about 10 years old, but I want to warn you that there will be some spoilers, so just a heads up on that. But let's look at how do we apply some of these questions to movies and try and figure out what is the worldview that's being communicated here. So I wanted to start with the 2009 film Sherlock Holmes because I recently watched it with my wife and the worldview of the movie just jumps right out at you. Now, this is a tale about Sherlock Holmes solving a mystery, and the mystery is that there's a man who had been going around committing murders. He was executed himself. His name's Lord Blackwood, and he has seemingly come back from the dead. Now, this has caused all of London to be in a panic, and people are starting to believe that this Lord Blackwood has magical, supernatural powers over life and death, and that he's going to be out there murdering more people. And so it's Sherlock Holmes's job to solve the mystery and prevent London from spiraling into a world of fear. Now, The solution to the movie is rationalism. You'll see that at the end of the film, Sherlock Holmes uncovers all of this man, Lord Blackwood's tricks, and shows that there was nothing supernatural going on at all. It was all just smoke and mirrors. And so, in this way, Sherlock Holmes reinforces sort of a naturalistic rationalism worldview. But there's more to that. See, the problem in the movie was the fear was going to cause all of these bad things to happen. And fear comes from people failing to be rational, failing to believe in a naturalistic world, and to seek out evidence that confirms that. And fear can destroy things when people believe in the supernatural. So Sherlock Holmes presents a worldview steeped in rationalism and naturalism. Only the natural world exists, and only the world which we can understand with our natural senses is real. Real knowledge can only come from science. But let's take a look at another film that also came out in 2009 that actually presents almost a contradictory message to the message of Sherlock Holmes. And that's the 2009 film Avatar. Now, this was one of the highest grossing films of all time. And many people remember that it was one of the first films presented in a new 3D digital technology. And so many people went and watched this film. And ironically, the message of Sherlock Holmes is actually contradictory to the film Avatar. In Avatar, knowledge does not only come from science, but from experience, spirituality, and tradition. The problem in Avatar is modernism, or modernism applied to human industry, which has destroyed the earth and has forced the people from Earth to now seek out life on this new planet, Pandora. The solution for our characters is to go and revere nature as divine and abandon our desires for more and more. Now, you'll notice in the film Avatar, the good guys, whether they are the Na'vi, the tribal people of Pandora, or the scientists, the humans who are presented as the good guys, they all have this reverence for nature and for Aowa, which is a spiritual being that the humans are trying to describe through the language of science, but the Na'vi describe through a spiritual, traditional type of language. Now, I would argue that Avatar is actually presenting multiple worldviews that stem from pantheism, environmentalism, and influences from Buddhism and Hinduism. And Avatar is also a story about identity, and you'll see that many Hollywood films are stories about identity. The main character in Avatar, Jake Sully, is a man without an identity, with nothing to live or die for. He finds a new identity, community, and family amongst the Na'vi. Jake finds purpose and meaning and is willing to fight and die for this new purpose. Many films are telling a story about identity and our search for identity, our longing for identity, the journey to find that identity. And the 2013 film Frozen is no different. Frozen is the story of the search for identity, and it's something that millions of people around the world obviously could relate to, as this film was incredibly popular. And we see this theme, like I said, over and over again in movies. In this film, Elsa, the princess of Arendelle, has to hide a part of herself and assume a false identity, pretending to be someone she's not and hiding her true self. The tension in the film rises when an accident begins to expose Elsa's true powers and her true self. So she exiles herself while at the same time finally letting go of her fake self and embracing her true self. Now, Elsa embraces a type of relativism where she becomes the moral compass for what is right or wrong. And she lives however she wants based on her feelings. She even sings the line, "No right or wrong, no rules for me, I'm free." This encapsulates her worldview. However, the heart of Frozen is not that Elsa needs to accept herself. That's only one part of the story. The kingdom is still trapped in eternal winter because the people cannot accept Elsa, or at least Elsa cannot live in her true identity in the kingdom and in the relationships that she was in before. So the denouement or resolution of the film is when Elsa returns to her kingdom and her friends, family, and people, and they all accept her true identity, and she learns to live in community with this new identity. Now, part of Frozen presents an individualistic worldview where right or wrong are based on our feelings and where we need to search within ourselves to discover who we are. That's how we find our meaning and purpose. Real love is when our friends and family accept our self defined morality. But there's also a message about community and how the community needs to come into balance and help us to accept ourselves and live our truth. And it's not hard to look at a film like Frozen and see a lot of analogs to real world discussions that people are having. So let me add a few final thoughts. Although many films share some themes with Christianity, at the heart of almost every film is a worldview that opposes the Christian worldview. That doesn't mean that there is nothing redemptive in Hollywood films, but we need to be aware of what films communicate to us and what ideas we are being fed. When we watch films, it's important to ask questions. And when we engage our minds as we watch films, we learn to understand these worldviews better. In turn, this can help in our conversations with others about films. Movies can actually help us to understand our culture and the beliefs of those around us better. But what do you think? What kind of questions do you ask when watching films? And can you think of any films that have a great example of a clear and coherent worldview? Leave me a comment in the comment section below. And once again, it always helps if you like, subscribe, and share this with somebody who would enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Blessings.